All right, all right, all right. Hey everyone, welcome to another live. Today we're going to be talking about the cloud skills you will need in 2025. And today I have a huge special guest. It's an honor to have this gentleman on this live, giving you and dropping gems for you to learn about how you need to prepare for this next uh 5 to 6 months and going into 2025 with a new mindset and a new skill set. But first, I want to make sure everyone can see and hear us. Can you put the LUs in the chat if you can? I know a couple of people are just now coming on. Put the LUs in the chat if you can hear and you can see as well. But for that, I want to introduce you to a gentleman I've been following for a while. Um, Fortunately for me, he lives in the same state, so there's opportunity to connect as well. But this gentleman is a thought leader. He is an influencer. He is an author. He is a founder, a researcher, a leading researcher, an independent analyst. You've seen a lot of his blogs on InfoWorld. He has amazing courses here on LinkedIn, 72 to be exact, and he has a on fire YouTube channel that's grown to 80,000 subscribers in the last 5 months called the Cloud Computing Insider. I want y'all to give it up. Put the DLs in the chat if you can hear me. Put the DLs in the chat for David Linthicum. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. It's great to be here on your podcast. Yeah, we're in the same state, not that far apart.
Yeah, yeah, man. And it's truly a blessing to have you. I mean, you've been sharing so much information about where cloud is going and just teaching me a whole lot, about new terms, new technology, just making me question the way I think and, how I interact with folks talking about cloud. And even, if we get an opportunity to talk to some businesses, especially about what we do at Level Up in Tech, just a general overall or overhaul way of thinking about the future. So we're going to get straight to the meat and potatoes and get straight to it because we're limited on time. We want to make sure we give everybody the value that they came for. Can you start by sharing a bit about your background and how you became a thought leader in cloud computing?
Sure. I've been around a long time. I've been in the business almost 35 years. Started when I was 18 years old as a Lisp programmer. I was an AI, believe it or not, at the time. So many years ago, back in the middle 80s, I was a developer, analyst, did the normal developer stuff. I worked for many different companies and a lot of government contractors because I live in the DC area. Then kind of shifted into a CTO position at a big oil company, held that for a while. And then I parlayed that into a CTO position within a technology company. So it was the first time I've ever kind of shifted over from becoming an enterprise industry person into a technology builder and provider, focused on the middleware space, created the term called enterprise application integration, which is the book behind me, which turned out to be a big deal in the early 90s. Built that up with a company which was Software AG Americas, Saga Software. We sold that about 3-4 years after we took it public. Spun out of that into a company called Mercator, which was basically doing the same thing. We sold that 4 years later. Spun out of that into a new startup called Grand Central, which was one of the first cloud providers that started back in the 90s. I actually helped them get it off the ground. First
Wow.
started understanding the basics of cloud computing, how it worked, but this was integration as a service, kind of a very, very early days boomy at the time. That ran into the ground. Then I spun out of that and became a CEO a couple of times. Both companies sold, did the normal fix that company thing. And again, for a technology company, spun out of that, signed an agreement where I wasn't allowed to be a technology provider anymore because I sold the company and became a service person. I started a company called Blue Mountain Labs, which was at its time pretty innovative, which was taking existing software systems and turning it into a SaaS-based solution. And this is in the 2005 2006 timeframe. So this is before cloud really kind of took hold. Sold that company, spun out of that into Cloud Technology Partners, which is getting close to the end now. I'm old, so this is a long story. And we sold that to HP back in 2016. Left with a bunch of people and went to Deloitte. I was at Deloitte for about 7 years. I was the chief cloud strategy officer, which is basically the guy figuring out where things are going to get kicked. Took retirement back in January And here I am now as Mr. Independent. Glad to be talking to you.
Yeah, and giving a lot of gems throughout this process. If y'all haven't, you need to go to InfoWorld, check out a lot of his blogs there, and you need to go to YouTube and check out his YouTube channel. It's amazing. I promise you, after one video, you'll come out with a new mindset of how you need to be thinking about cloud technology. I promise you. And so, talking about cloud technology, right? What excites you the most about the future of cloud technology?
I think the fact of the matter is we agreed to be flexible and heterogeneous around it. One of the things that bothered me when cloud first started off, because I was definitely all in the cloud and I was focused on it as a technology focus area and a discipline, was they were basically trying to get everybody on a particular cloud provider. So in other words, take everything in your enterprise and in your data center and put it on Amazon, put it on Microsoft, put it on Google. And I realized that wasn't the reality. The reality is that things are going to be very heterogeneous. We're going to have very eclectic number of systems which are adjusted to be optimized for their particular use case. That's going to be running on my phone, running my watch, running on an edge computer, running in my car, running in the cloud. Lots of stuff is going to run in the cloud, running in my core servers, running in a data center, even some of the old legacy systems. So it brightens my heart that we're thinking differently about it. And even the cloud providers, they've opened up the discussion to talk about multi-cloud and heterogeneous cloud and the ability to provide open integration services with various systems, because they see the same things I think the industry sees, is that we're moving into a very complex heterogeneous environments where the platforms we pick are going to be related directly to the business problems we're looking to solve. We're not going to force everything into cloud. This cloud only stuff that I heard back in 2010, 2013 didn't scale very well. And now we're in the repatriation movement. We're hitting the reset button and moving a lot of this stuff back from cloud to on-premise. So we're thinking more pragmatically about how this technology works. And that's the good news. Of course, the bad news is we have heterogeneity, complexity, all these other problems to solve now, because we're not going to move to the same environment. And we're certainly going to build things like generative AI systems on premises and in the cloud and on our wristwatch and things like that, and on our iPhones now. Then that needs to be kind of a core focus. And so that seems to be the problem that the enterprises are solving now, their ability to kind of look at how this heterogeneity is going to work, how we're going to manage complexity, how we're going to manage differences in data, how we're going to manage different processes across different platforms. And that's a problem we've been looking to solve one way or another for the last 30 years. Never solved it. It's actually gotten worse. But now we kind of have to, certainly with the advent of AI, focus on making that stuff work in order to get the most economy, the most economical, the most value out of these platforms that we can. And that's the stride right now. I think that's where the industry is shifting.
Yeah. So when you talk about heterogeneous computing, I've read a lot that you talk about a new term, ubiquitous computing.
Right.
Is this typically the same thing that you're talking about now?
Yeah, ubiquitous computing is really just kind of the notion that we're going to have pieces of applications in many instances running all over the place.
Mm.
And we're going to have certain applications are going to be better on certain platforms, and the ability to have uh, the ability to accept the fact that it's going to run all over the place, and the ability to use those platforms to the best advantage. Now, ubiquitous computing kind of comes with the added value in that we're able to find and leverage. This is kind of future stuff. We're able to find and leverage platforms and move the applications and move the data resources to the platforms that are best available to pick them up. And that's been a notion that's been around for a long time. We have cloud brokering and platform brokering, things like that. But this is the ability to have an automated system to make that more of a reality. You got to remember that we have a massive amount of computing systems out there that are at 3% utilization that we're not using. And these things are very expensive. They take a lot of power, they take a lot of money. The ability to utilize those resources when you can't always do it, but utilize those resources as an ubiquitous resource is going to be something that I think enterprises are going to leverage moving forward. So the complexity, leads to how do we solve this stuff? I think ubiquity and the ability to leverage ubiquitous abstraction models, things like that, those are still a few years out. But I think ultimately that's how we solve this issue. So if you and I would write an application and we're not even thinking about the platform it's going to run on. We just launch it out to some sort of an AI mastermind that looks at the application, looks at the data, and moves it to whatever platform or platforms, plural, in whatever configuration that's going to be best for the application. When you even think about it. And by the way, if it starts to scale, it moves it to a different platform, making sure we're paying the least amount of money for the platform and getting the most amount of value. I think enterprises are very suspicious about cloud-based systems and enterprise. Some of the new technologies out there, they felt they got burned with cloud. The cost of cloud was way more than we thought it was going to be. They thought it was going to be. And now the ability to optimize these systems in certain ways, even optimize the cloud systems using patterns such as this, is really kind of, I think, the path moving forward.
So to simplify it for those who just now thinking about getting into cloud and just making sure I'm understanding more correctly too, David. So when you talk about ubiquitous computing, we're talking about if we're launching an application, the AI model will just take our application and use any resources that it deems fit to be able to deploy while looking at cost optimization, security, best practices, etc. So it can take something that we have on-prem, it can take something in AWS, it can take something in Azure, in Oracle, and combine all those things together to be able to launch our application with the right resources we need while saving us money at the same time.
Yeah, it'll do the optimization for us. And by the way, this has been a sales pitch. I think everybody in this industry has heard probably 1,000 times in the last 30 years. Some people come up with this thing as a net new idea. It's not a new idea. What is the new idea is that we're going to have to adapt the resources to it. So in other words, we know it needs to be done. We just have to figure it out. But it would be the automation of the placement of application workloads, data storage, processing, things like that, yeah, IO systems on the appropriate systems where it's going to do the most good. And some instances that's going to be mobile computing. Some instances it's going to be, running within our automobiles. Some instances that's going to be in the cloud. Many instances is going to be in the cloud. And sometimes it's going to run on spare capacity on this, this iMac in front of me. That's, I can see right here is running at 3% capacity. So therefore, I could probably do a lot of processing and run a lot of AI stuff. You got to remember, we have this massive movement, this desire to move to AI very quickly. And certainly the clients I'm working with, and even that's why I'm running the generative AI architecture courses now to teach people how to do that. And the pent up demand for this, if you look at the demand that people are asserting, and you look at the availability of processors we have now and the availability of electricity we have available, kilowatts that are available, we're going to run out of processors, run out of kilowatts very quickly. So I don't think that's the direct portion. We can't do these things with GPUs and massive amounts of NVIDIA chips and lots of CUDA and things like that. It's going to be about optimization of the platforms and becoming a little bit more economically viable. And the fact of the matter is, we're going to run out of resources very quick. We can't quadruple even 20 times, the best I can figure, the BAP and the napkin stuff, 20 times the number of computers based on what we have today in the next 5 years. We just don't have the kilowatts out there to support it. And quite frankly, it's not a good idea from the money perspective and the environmental perspective. And also, I think we're being lazy architects. We're not looking at how we're going to optimize these systems. We're just throwing money and resources at it. And I think those days are over. We did that in the world of cloud computing. It's very easy to allocate and provision resources. Yeah, but lo and behold, and as I write about in my Insider book, here we are 10 years later, enterprises are spending, best I can tell, 2.5 times more money than they thought they were going to spend. And that's more of that, by the way, is self-inflicted wounds. It's not a blaming the cloud providers. Fact of the matter is, the architects didn't think in terms of optimizing those systems. They were over provisioning these environments, overpaying for these environments, using them in ad hoc ways that cost too much money. And those days are over. The enterprises have been burned. And if I hear anything from CIOs and anything from CTOs that are looking to do the vision for the next 10 years, I'm hearing optimization, cost efficiency, utilization of resources, accountability, FinOps, all these sorts of things that were kind of not said 10 years ago in the world of cloud computing. It was just, hey, just throw stuff at it. Let's have a great time. And there was a big hype party. And now we are, now we're into 45% of applications and storage workloads that are running in the cloud. We're not seeing the business benefits coming from that. So we need to adjust. We need to think differently. We need to understand that cloud's always going to be an asset there that we're going to leverage. There's nothing against cloud, but we have to be smarter as the users of those systems. Like I mentioned, that overspending was not cloud computing's fault. When you look at each one of those use cases, it was self-inflicted wounds because we didn't have the architectural forethought to think how we're going to optimize the use of these systems. We just went ahead and threw resources and money at it. And like I tell my clients, if you give me enough money and time, I can solve any problem in the entire world. But we don't have enough money and time. We have limited amount of resources, limited amount of time. Businesses have businesses. They basically leverage these assets to promote their business, make them more innovative, make them more valuable in the market. And we need to think that way.
So two things, right? When we talk about NVIDIA and CUDA, while they're pumping out marketing to, kind of take over for AI and GPU processing, we're basically saying, while you're battling for first place, we're not going to have enough space for any of it anyway if we keep
Right.
going this direction, right? And then, when you talk about self-inflicting wounds as far as the costs that enterprises have endured running on the cloud, do you think pre 2020, because a lot of companies were anti-cloud and then COVID came and pushed a lot of companies to jump on this ship, they didn't have the architectural forethought from there to be like, okay, let's look at this new technology that is coming. Let's see how we can use it to our benefit and, optimize from there. Instead, they said, hey, we're not going to use this at all. It's a fad. But then when COVID hit, boom, we have to use this. And now, being that we didn't have any resources, talent, we didn't know what we were doing, we spent a crap load of money, and we just been spending a crap load of money ever since.
Yeah, COVID accelerated the dumb decisions, which were in many instances the straw that broke the camel's back. So I saw, and I mentioned this in an internal document one time when I look at the market in the system. I said the cloud computing market just went at 45 miles per hour to 70 miles an hour, and it went there in about 2 months. And demand for cloud consultants, demand for cloud resources, we saw the cloud demand start to scale up because companies were scared because they were getting their data center shut down, with quarantines, and they wanted to have the scalability system supporting a new remote workforce, which they had no idea how to support. And cloud, quite frankly, was probably one of the more desirable ways to do that. But in doing that, we accelerated dumb decisions that were, sorry, maybe not dumb decisions, misinformed decisions
Mm.
that were taking too many resources and doing things that weren't architecturally smart. So everything worked. You always hate that term. In other words, well, it worked, Dave. We got all our systems in our 10,000 applications on premise, and we put it in the cloud, and it worked. And all the systems compiled clean, and everything is fine. And hey, we just got a bill. It's $1 million. We thought it was going to be $100,000. Can you help us out with this? And then I look at it. There was no optimization, no refactoring. There was no cloud native capabilities that are added to those applications. And so we just accelerated the fact of the matter is we were making lots of mistakes where it was going to be more noticeable. So we're doing that prior to COVID, but in a very slow way. And some of the stuff was being fixed, but not a lot of the stuff was being fixed. We just didn't get any smarter. And when COVID hit, the demand spiked like that. Then we accelerated the bad decisions, the bad architectural practices, the under optimization stuff, which got us in trouble. And that it's funny. Then in 2023, and I always looked to that as the year that this happened. That's when everybody got their bills, and that's when I got the call. In other words, hey, Dave, this is a lot of money that we're paying for this, and they didn't see that coming. And so that's where the adjustments came from. And that's where you're looking at the repatriation stuff, which is code for, oops, we made a mistake. We shouldn't have put it in the cloud. We're putting it back where we found it. And that's because we're not willing to invest in optimizing that application for the cloud that we're moving to. It's not the cloud's fault. And if we're not willing to invest in the optimization of the systems and put it back where you found it, because it's going to run cheaper there because you're already on the hardware. By the way, what also happened in this last 10 years, the hardware costs have just plummeted, almost a 45-degree angle. I covered this in my book as well. So that threw a monkey wrench in the whole cloud computing business case. If the business case is we're going to be able to make you more money by using a service-based model versus a capital equipment where you own the equipment model, then you're going to have the ability. Then you're going to have the ability to make a huge amount of value out of cloud computing. What they didn't anticipate is that the cost of hardware would plummet, and which it has. I mean, look at HDD prices and common processor and cores, things like that. It's not free, but it's almost free. And the cost of the data centers is still pretty pricey,
Mm.
but the cost of running those hardware systems is significantly cheaper than it was 10 years ago. And certainly if you consider the value of money and adjust for inflation, it's not a clear business case anymore.
So what I'm seeing is when AI hit, I seen a lot of companies just got excited and they were going towards the same mistakes
Oh yeah.
even faster, right? But now companies are trying to, especially reading from the companies that you're dealing with are trying to be more smarter about it because they realize, hey, hold on, let's pump the brakes here. We did this before, so now this new exciting technology that we feel that we could take over the world with. We need to be smart, more careful, um, have more forethought and plan to make sure we don't run out of money using these resources because that can happen very quickly.
Yep.
Yeah. So, I want to just break it down for folks who are joining this live that just coming into it, trying to figure out if cloud is right for them or tech is just right for them, and just understand. I'm a very advocate of if you understand how the businesses need the tech, then you can understand where you can learn to be able to be an asset. So speaking of that, right? Let's
Mhm.
talk about what are the top three skills that you believe cloud or even tech professionals need to develop for 2025.
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's funny. When you posed that when we first started discussing this thing, it was a good framework for me to think about. What's moving forward, and I think the main thing it's going to be around operations, the ability, which is weird because that would things like a very boring thing. I'm just going to operate something, but you think about this, we're not very good at operations and operating these systems. So the ability to leverage AI ops, the ability to look at observability, and your ability to operate a heterogeneous environment, including cloud and a multi-cloud deployment and different on-premise systems at the same time. What's going to happen if we're going to get this complexity and the heterogeneity under control? We're going to have to put every system out there as much as possible into the same operational abstraction layers. In other words, the on-premise systems, the mobile systems, things in our data center, old legacy, mainframe technology, as well as our cloud providers, as well as our edge-based systems, and our net new AI systems. They're going to be run by the same layer, with hopefully the same observability system, so we understand how everything's interacting one to another, and can figure out how to find a single source of truth in terms of what's solving a problem, and the ability to monitor and deal with performance and security and AI ops and all these sorts of things in a single layer versus doing things in very siloed ways. And that's the way we're doing it now. You think about it, we deploy an AWS application or a group of applications. We leverage their observability tools and their AI management tools, their cloud management tools to run those applications. Well, we do the same thing for Microsoft, the same thing for Google, the same thing for our mainframe. They have specialized systems for that. The same thing for our common core systems. And we got to start doing that, because all we're doing is creating more silos that need specialized talent to run those particular areas. They're getting overly complex. That becomes a performance issue, a security issue, a cost issue, because we have to pay for lots of different talent around to maintain these systems, and no common observability in terms of how we're spending the money and how these interdependencies are occurring. You got to remember, if we have a FinOps system that just runs in a particular cloud provider, I always tell my clients this, that does you no good, because you got to figure out how you're interacting with your legacy systems, your mainframe systems, your mobile computing systems, because we're not building applications on a single platform anymore, because there's going to be some interdependencies. That cloud system may look pretty good in the silo of itself, but may be causing some overruns in cost on the mainframe systems and the legacy databases that it's accessing. And so performance issues, cost issues, things like that. We have no visibility into that until we do common audits. And by the time you do that, you've already wasted many millions of dollars. So if we're going to move this AI stuff, and it seems to be inevitable that's going to happen based on the demand that I've seen, then you have to have some sort of an operational system that's going to drive these things. Most of that stuff, at least for the next 3 to 5 years, is going to end up in the cloud. And the reason why is because the cloud comes with a built-in ecosystem. It's easier to build stuff there. In other words, I don't have to configure my AI ecosystem on my own server and do a DIY kind of situation, I can go up to AWS and say, hey, here's the easy button. Build me a AWS ecosystem where the training data, the bias checking, the FinOps, the operational stuff, about 50 different systems need to be allocated to do that. And I actually did an article that I said, okay, if I build a system on a cloud, that's how many systems you need. That's how many services have to be engaged to get those things running. And so if that's going to be the case, I don't want to do that myself. It's easier to do that in the cloud. The problem with that, unless you have operational control over that, that's going to be very good, and some good architectural decisions that come along with that, that's going to have a tendency to be very expensive. And I'm seeing that right now. People are coming to me and they said, well, we're getting $1 million bill from AWS or Google or Microsoft, not to pick on any one of those guys. And when I look at it, is that's because there's no operational visibility and observability into those systems, and because they didn't build it in, because they're not, it's an afterthought. They're waiting to get in trouble, and then they start retroactively fixing these systems. And the reason they don't have a complete observability in the system, because they don't have visibility across the silos and the operational silos. So that means if we're looking for 2025, which means we're predicting demand, not demand we're seeing now, which is the conversation we're having, then the ability to have people around who are going to specialize in operations, be operations engineer, the ability to get into AI ops kind of technology, the ability to drive AI, ability to drive ML ops kinds of systems, ability to operate storage, and the ability to look at this stuff in a heterogeneous way. So now we're showing up, say, I only know how to operate AWS cloud. And that's all I do. That can't wash anymore. You got to be able to operate everything and anything if you're going to be an operational specialist. So I do see a specialized skill and architecture and engineering talent that needs to be built around the operational stuff. It's not just building one talent pool. It's building an operational architect. It's building an operational engineer. It's building an operational scientist. It's building AI integration systems, the ability to have an AI and database specialist, and all these sorts of skill sets that are going to need to be built in 2025 to really kind of step up and solve this issue, because it's coming. I'm seeing it now. We're running into a wall. So let's figure out how to make it work. So that's one.
So when you look at, just to break it down for the folks who are listening that are new, when you talk about these things, we're talking about just literally using AI to simplify, automate some of the systems we're using to develop a new observability into launching our applications, and then we be able to observe cost and manage the cost, not just on the platform that we're using, but other platforms as well. So understanding, just for simplicity, looking at what budget we have, and if we're going over budget for each and every platform that we're using, and where we're spending our money as well, right? So um, when you said just people are having observability just on one platform, but we got to look at what we're actually using, is being able to understand, okay, are we spending money here, or we're spending money on this platform even more, and what services are we spending money here, or are we spending money on-prem? How much is costing us to do these things on-prem as well? So for the main thing for you all just listening is to just really understand um, how companies are using AI and ML right now. And a lot of cloud service providers, I mean, all cloud service providers have some form of ML ops and AI ops, specifically AWS as well. But also look into, how can you help companies optimize the cost, right? We talk about FinOps, right? What are some services they're using to detect how much they're spending? But one thing I want to put, you mention it, but do you think right now, where we have a huge gap of what they think they need and where we actually need, do you think it's a huge gaping hole for cloud security on AI as well?
Yeah, absolutely. You just hit the nail on the head. I think ultimately this complexity is going to be a security issue, and we're going to have SecOps, or security operation, that comes along for the ride. And I should have mentioned that when I was talking about all the skills that we needed. That's going to be a huge growth area. But again, it's going to be security that's not necessarily native to the cloud. It's going to have the security that's native to the heterogeneous nature of the security systems we're looking to run. If someone shows up and tells me they're a AWS security engineer, we may need that skill, but it needs to be used in conjunction with a SecOps architect that has holistic understanding of all the different security systems and how they're managed and how they're linked one together, how we leverage common directory systems for identity access management, how we're able to extend security on our particular mobile devices down to legacy systems, down to the cloud-based systems, and how everything kind of functions one to another. We're going to need a bunch of different skills and different layers of abstraction. So we're going to need the architects who have foundational understanding of everything that's going on. We're going to need the engineers that are able to carry out what the architects are able to define. And then we're going to need the particular native skill sets for the cloud providers, legacy systems to implement the security in those environments. You got to remember the mechanisms are going to stay the same. We're not going to swap out different security systems, force legacy systems to adapt to something that's new. That'll never work. It's too expensive to do that. Companies will never go for it. So again, it's leveraging an abstraction layer, which is able to deal with the functional differences between some sort of idea of how we're going to manage things at a conceptual layer versus down to the actual physical implementation. And when the people are going to be organized the same way. In other words, we have people who understand how we do things in a holistic way, deal with the concepts of the systems, and then how we drill down to the particular skill sets, even people with native capabilities in those environments. So it's going to be a holistic team. Most enterprises, this is going to be about 100 people to kind of make this thing happen. And good news is many of them already exist in the enterprise, already managing stuff. And maybe it'll be 150 people you have now. You're able to reduce down to 100 people in a year's time, because people are doing things in a better and more manageable way. And also those people are going to be repurposed to do other things that are going to be more useful to the company. But the company sees it. In other words, the companies I'm talking to, what are you dealing with? And they're telling the heterogeneity is killing us. They thought they would end up having all their assets in cloud. That was on the board presentation 10 years ago. Here we are in 2024. That's never going to happen. And they should have known that. Now they have to deal with complexity, everything we just talked about, ubiquitous computing, things like that. How best do you do that? How best do you approach it? I got a course out on LinkedIn Learning called Cloud Complexity Management. I did 6 years ago. And that's because we saw this coming as kind of a core capability where it talks about architectural patterns and dealing with complexity and how to boil it down to a functional primitive and build it back up again. Unfortunately, it's 3 hours long, but it had to be 3 hours long to get through all the bits and pieces you need to do in dealing with AI, dealing with storage, dealing with security, dealing with ops, dealing with all the things that are going to be there. DevOps, I just saw that question pop up. All that stuff has to be rethought in terms of how it's going to be run across very different systems that look physically different ports of power. Sometimes it looks like my wristwatch. Sometimes it looks like this cup. Sometimes it looks like this computer. And be used to the fact that we're going to live in a world where all these things are on the table as being valid platforms to run these systems. And in doing that, we have to figure out how to operate these things, make them secure, deal with performance, deal with governance, deal with security. We just talked about that. All these things have to be appropriated and understood. We're going to need lots of talent and lots of skills in those areas. They're going to build that up. So people are dealing with observability engineering, things like you'll hear that a few times. You hear operational engineering, things like that. Those are pre-existing skill sets that are going to move into this direction that's going to be happening in 2025. We're going to see people like me complaining about it, but other people taking the idea, building products and services around it. Consulting firms pick it up, have a practice that's able to do that. And then suddenly we have a whole set of skill sets that are organized, a structure of individuals that are going to be moving this forward. Good news is we have a lot of people with those skill sets. We just have to build more observability architects. We have to build more SecOps engineers, SecOps architects. All these kind of skills are lacking out there right now. And so there's going to have to be built to solve these issues.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And let me put this question up just so everyone can see. Anita Phillips says, are DevOps engineers going out demand? Just to piggyback on what David said, I believe that the role is going to change and the tools that we're going to use are going to change to integrate more AI and ML ops. And I think everyone, not everyone, but most, and especially engineers, since we're going to have ubiquitous computing where we're looking at using all types of resources on different platforms, I think we all going to have to adopt an architect mindset of best practices, compliance, all of that stuff. And for those of you who are new, there's nothing to be scared of, right? What you should be doing anyway is just learning the basics, getting hands on, and understanding how some tooling works within engineering. And then once you get into a role, you can gain some experience and then start thinking about these things in the company to help you. But with speaking of companies, right? With companies now are it's flipping more so to a company demand market instead of an employee demand market. I think that term is used and we're misinformed because I think if you learn the right skills, what it seems like now is still an employee demand market because companies need the talent. But some companies are saying, it's still, we can offer what we want to offer. We want to make people come back to the office. We want to do this and that. And how do you feel about uh, the the talent battle right now, where companies are trying to put their foot in a order of we're scaling back on what we pay, right? We want people to come to the office, but on the same side of the coin, we don't know what we're doing, and we need the talent. So, how do you see this thing playing out?
Yeah, it's kind of a false thing right now. Best I can tell, the unemployment rate in the tech field is about 2 to 3%, which is below natural. And you kind of figure that was the case when some of the big companies laid a lot of people off. Thousands of people were out in the street. They all had jobs in 2 weeks. I mean, to a person. Everybody contacted me looking for references, friends of mine, things like that. And I checked back with them. They always had another job very quickly. Either that as a contractor, some of them parlayed that I'm not going to employ anymore. I'm going to start my own business. But they were doing something else and making, in a better position than they were with the companies. So companies that end up laying people off typically do so for other reasons than then they're financially inviable. They're trying to cut, dead wood and things like that. I hear that a lot. So it's still going to be a seller's market in terms of skills and talent out there. In fact, I keep hearing from people that the reason we can't make the cloud deployments, the reason we can't move into AI is we can't find the talent to make it happen. Try hiring
There
an
you
AI
go.
engineer now. It's you can't find them. Try hiring a security engineer. Anybody with any kind of a skill set, anybody with any kind of a certification in a particular cloud product, cloud technology, is going to be able to find a gig. So my big thing, I mentor a few people that are pivoting careers. So they're, cops and teachers and firemen, and they're trying to get into tech and make some more money because they can't make it at what they're making at their current jobs. I always tell them, just go get a certification on a particular cloud provider and just go down the 3 certification path. And once you get those 3 certifications, you're going to find people out there are going to contact you and get you working. You're not going to get premium dollars, at least for the first year, but you're going to inflect pretty quickly to 150, $200,000 based on the demand. And that's kind of the way it works out there. So if you're able to put in the time and you have some good skills and you can get through an interview, you're going to get a job. That's just the way it is. And sometimes people who can't get in through an interview are still going to get a job. College educations aren't needed anymore. They're not on the critical path. I don't think they should have been in the first place. And people are looking for those tactical skills that are getting them into positions, and also looking for the strategic skills, architecture, things like that, that they're buying into the marketplace. So companies that are, I wrote a article about this, which got a bazillion views. Companies that are forcing their employees back into the market, back into the office, are companies you probably shouldn't work for. They're not innovative. They're not thinking ahead. They're not thinking like agile individuals. They're focused on tactical things that used to drive me nuts. Back when I first started my career, was you had to be in your desk, be in the office at 8 and sitting at your desk at 8:15, and that was dumb because it that wasn't a metric that should be considered. And so companies of the future are going to be virtual. They're not going to be a lot of brick and mortar companies. They're going to be ideas. They're going to be concepts and innovation. They're going to be collections of people that exist all over the place. And, I did this in my days when I was starting a technology company. People lived where they wanted to live, worked where we wanted to work. Everything was MBA. manage it by objective, and they got things done. So companies that are thinking that way, companies that are going to drive innovation, those are the ones that you should be pursuing. Companies that are forcing people back to the office, looking to reduce pay because some sort of a market correction. I've heard that going on. Basically, you said that is not something you want to work for. You don't have to work for them. There's plenty of other jobs to happen out there. I know it's scary to quit a job and go get another job, or go find a job when you're, until you have another job, but there's plenty of companies out there that are hiring. What will happen now is we'll come out of the summer, we'll get into the end of the fiscal year for many of these organizations, and they'll see a rebudgeting and a refunding of a lot of these positions. So in the fall, you're going to see a big uptick in the demand for people, and also a lack of supply that's out there. Birth rates are falling. We don't have as many people. People hate when I say that, but it's true. We don't have as many people who are getting into the career as we should be. Many males are not going to college. And those are normally the concentration of who's in tech. And so, for whatever reason, demographics, birth rate, lots of things that we have no control over, there's going to be a diminished supply that's going to get into the market that's going to get worse over time. So we can certainly backfill some of that stuff with international workers, and that happens as well. But at the end of the day, no matter how you cut it, there's going to be fewer people around than the demand out there. Than the demand that's there. And my fear is that companies are going to, basically settle for less than talented people. And we kind of saw that in the early days of cloud computing, and make a lot of mistakes. The AI stuff is going to change the way in which we hire, because it's going to take a lot of people out of the existing market spaces. So where someone was a cloud engineer, now they're going to be an AI engineer. Someone was a cloud architect, now they're going to be an AI architect. That's one less cloud architect, one less cloud engineer we're going to have on the marketplace that are getting jobs. Those jobs need to be backfilled. We still need those positions. So as people move in and try to get into cooler and more hype-driven spaces, now it's AI. 15 years ago it was cloud. That's going to be a problem that we're going to have to be dealing with. So we're going to find that we don't have a lot of cloud pros that are out there. And this is going to be a problem in 2025 than we thought we would have. Where did they go? Oh, they're all working in an AI, and not necessarily on cloud computing anymore. They're working on AI systems no matter where they exist. And I think that's just going to be a reality of the market. So companies, what they need to do is start now and do the skills planning that they think they're going to need over the next couple of years. Figure out how to train the existing individuals, and dare I say it, even do retention bonuses now before people find other jobs. You're paying them more to stay there. Give people flexible work environments. Give people more vacation, and be a little bit more kinder to the people who are working for you, because they're going to be defining your future. They're the ones who are building the value of innovation. And if you don't invest in those people, then your business is going to be for naught. Everything in the next 10 years is going to be defined by the technology configurations in these businesses. It doesn't matter if you're making tires or a healthcare company. It's going to be the core intellectual property of the systems that you're building, and its ability to do things in very unique and innovative ways, the ability to make innovative differentiators in the marketplace. Now, that a lot of that stuff's going to be built on AI, running on cloud, things like that. You're going to need a huge number of brain powers to make it happen. And I can't do it as a single person. I can train people, but even the number of people who need to be trained are in the millions now. It's not in the thousands anymore. So it's going to be a boom time for anybody who's willing to become ambitious and go out there and get the skills. Those who are looking for the skills, it's going to be a challenge. Do some planning now. Don't wait until the problem occurs and then try to get it solved. That doesn't work. And get into the marketplace. So I think it's good news for those with skills. Not so great news for those that need the skills, but if they do some planning ahead, I think they can be successful there as well.
Absolutely. So for those of you who need the skills right now, right? A lot of people are just afraid just even to tackle the technology because they're afraid of breaking stuff, but the experience comes in the failures. You're going to break something, you're going to fail. That's how you learn. And companies want to see how you can solve their problems. So if you can even just have a strategy and just pinpoint and say, hey, I want to work for these 5 companies. And what are the common things that I need to learn that can help me in 2025 be an asset to one of those 5? then you start learning those skills and understand how you're going to impact the business just from a high level standpoint. I think you'll be able to connect with a lot of people and get some referrals and possibly do well in interviews and land a role. Now, for those of you, I think that's in a role right now, as David said, companies need to look at their budget and understand how they're going to help upskill these individuals. Because I think if these individuals have to come out of pocket and upskill themselves, they, they're going to have to come out with a retention bonus, period. Because if I paid to upskill myself, I'm gone. I'm going to the next bigger bag, the bigger opportunity. So enterprise companies going to have a lot to think about right now, and as far as how we're going to get our talent to the next level. And Anita, yes, I mean, you should be confident because it's still a seller's market. You're still going to be out there. I suggest everyone that's looking to get into tech or get into cloud, get into any type of tech role in the next year, you should start looking at yourself and how you running the business, right? How are you building your product? How are you building your service? How are you getting leads to land the best client? You should change the way you're thinking now, because the way tech is going to be played in the next 2 years, these roles are going to change and new roles are going to pop up, just as David said. You're going to see a slew of ML ops and AI roles that's going to pop up that need specific skill sets. So if we can now learn the basics and the fundamentals, we can get specific later. But the goal is to just adopt the technology that's uh, is going to change. So if you've been in a role for 10 years and you haven't learned anything now, you better open up Udemy or Pluralsight, or you better invest in a mentor or someone to help you get to the next level, because your role will probably phase out if you're not learning something new. And that's just my advice for it.
Great advice.
Yeah. Hey, listen, man, you you dropped so many gems today, and I just appreciate you coming on. Just giving us some advice, telling us, where the market is going. And I think everyone is excited that's looking at this, because just like me, if you're like me, right? Put the DLs in the chat if you're like me. He's opened my mind up to brand new possibilities is what's going to happen in 2025, and what your thinking should shift to. So if this is you, if you're thinking like me, put the DLs in the chat. But you can find David on YouTube. He has 72 courses on LinkedIn. He has probably thousands of blogs on InfoWorld that are listen. I'm an advocate of reading. Reading is fundamental, and I think a lot of people in tech don't read enough. And I think if you go and read David's blogs, it would just change your mindset about where this tech is going. And I think if you just digest it and just keep reading and keep learning, you'll be that much sharper in your next interview. You'll be that much sharper in your next meeting. You'll be that much sharper in your next presentation, because you'll now understand a lot of things that even top brass in the office didn't take the time to learn. So that's my golden nugget for you all. David, what is the most important thing that you've learned throughout your career that can turn into a piece of advice for newcomers that's trying to get into tech?
Yeah, you just hit the nail on the head. Be a autodidact, be a proactive learner, and crave knowledge. I mean, that's the best and thing that I found. Suddenly, I realized, I think when I was in my 20s, and I says, "Oh, they're paying me for what I know. They're not paying me to show up every day. So the more I know, the more I'll get paid." And I found that out pretty quick. So I mean, you just hit the nail on the head. Read, learn, question, participate. Uh, you know, uh, and also figure out why you want to get up in the morning. Is it going to be an engineering job? Is it going to be an architect job? Is it a leadership job? Is it going to be an administrative job? Something like that. Think about what motivates you, because let me tell you, you can make $1 million a year and be underpaid. So, keep that in mind. Learn all you can, and get the job you want, and do something that's going to have a passion for you.
Thank you so much, sir. And I see they put the DLS in the chat. I said DL. I said DLs, but I think y'all said put the S in there anyway. But once again, I appreciate you. everyone that's just hopping on, or if you've been watching, you've been watching the cloud skills you need in 2025. This will be up on YouTube as well tonight. So come back, check it out, rewatch it, keep learning, and let's keep leveling up. And once again, Mr. Linthicum, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right. See y'all later.
See ya. Bye.